Ah, sunny Sacramento, California, the powerhouse of California's Central Valley and its state capital. It was once home to cultural icons like Smosh, Deftones, Death Grips, and of course, 100% honest decision making. This city and its area have a lot of cultural ties to the Bay Area, but you are sorely mistaken if you consider any part of Sacramento the Bay Area.
Don't call me. Don't come by my house. We're done.
If you don't know much about the history of rail, then you wouldn't think of Sacramento as being an important hub for transportation. Well, unfortunately, you're sorely mistaken. Its main Sacramento Valley station is important as a transfer hub for local, commuter, and intercity rail. From here, you can travel as far north as Seattle, as far south as Los Angeles, and as far east as even Chicago. What you might not also know is that Sacramento has a pretty robust light rail transit system with 3 lines, brand new rolling stock, and plans for expansion. It's crucial to the city's transportation network with 6.5 million annual riders last year. Come join me as we explore the SAC-RT light rail system with its 43 miles of standard gauge track and 53 stations. Thank you first and foremost for over 4,000 subs. I am beyond honored to have all your support, and I of course am going to shout out these lovely patrons. So thank you to George Vitez, Jay Tanner, Damon Ibarra, My Patreon You Know, Tony Stunts, Geezer Windbag, Jake Brabick, Carlos DeLuca, and Flatlander. I hold you all in deep gratitude. The 1980s. It's a new era of public transit. The light rail system during this time serves as a revival of the old streetcar and trolley systems of yesteryear, with metro-like amenities like platforms and high speeds. It's also way cheaper to build than a metro or commuter rail line. San Diego, 500 miles south, was the first U.S. region to develop a light rail line in 1981, and the amazing success of this line would inspire many mid-sized American cities like Denver and Sacramento with tons of cheap, arable land and sprawl to start their own. The plan? To connect suburban communities to downtown Sacramento, the center of the state government. Park and ride lots would be in single-family zone communities to incentivize people to take the train, because at this time, especially in the 1980s, Sacramento was very, very car-brained. At the time, the system opened as a single line in 1987, and it was already a pretty impressive 18.3 miles long. The segment would run from Watt I-80 to downtown Sacramento, and at R Street the line would turn to the east all the way to Butterfield Station. Also, you can tell that it's a different era. I mean, this map of the light rail system from 1999 promotes the use of parking at these stations, and it even heavily advertises it. Oh boy, how the times have really changed in 25 years. The system did remain pretty stagnant from its opening in 1987 all the way to 1998, taking 11 years from the start of it to have a measly 1-station extension. Although, to be fair, 2 infill stations did open up in 1993 at the 39th and the 48th Street stations. The 2000s, though, came with a bunch of massive upgrades. This decade would be huge for SAC-RT, giving the system another spur, this time to the city's south. In 2003, a 6.3-mile extension to Meadowview was opened up. In 2004, the extension from Mather Field to Sunrise Boulevard opened up eastward. And finally, in 2005, the Gold Line would reach its eastern terminus at the center of the city of Folsom. A massive line and extension indeed. In 2006, the hits just keep on coming. Nothing but W's. The Gold Line would extend just 0.7 miles to the west to provide a connection between SAC-RT and the very important Sacramento Valley Intercity Light Rail Station. Here at this station, you can take the Capitol Corridor down to San Jose, hop on long-distance trains like the California Zephyr to Chicago, and also the Coast Starlight to LA or Seattle. So honestly, this is the premier connection the system has to offer, and it's a no-brainer that SAC-RT has a station here at the Intercity Sac Valley Station. In 2012, though, there is a brand new Green Line expansion, And we'll get more into this in the future expansion section, but SacRT is actually planning a green line that will head into the city's north Natomas neighborhood, eventually ending at Sacramento International Airport. The first phase of this is complete, but it's a little underwhelming. I mean, the Green Line spur starts north of 8th Street and it follows 7th Street for a couple of miles, turning left on Richards Boulevard, and there's only one new station on the Green Line built so far, the 7th and Richards Township 9 station, which we'll cover more in detail later. In 2015, though, the Blue Line would get another southbound extension from Meadowview, a 4.3 mile line with some pretty cool elevated parts all the way to South Sacramento, in front of the Consumnes River College, adding 4 new stations to the system. And as for right now, these stations make up the surprisingly extensive Sacramento light rail system. Let's dive into all of them. Alright, so if you're new here, I'll tell you how I divvy up my work. I like to analyze different spurs of the line rather than different lines, so I don't end up repeating myself, and because it makes sense from a geographical standpoint. Sacramento's light rail system does have a weird layout, so I'll do my best to justify starting off with the city's downtown first. The Central Spur. This spur is going to be from the western point, the Sacramento Valley Light Rail Station, all the way through downtown on 7th and 8th Streets, and then right on O Street to 16th Street. Sacramento Valley. You know that I love intermodal stations. Sacramento, I think in general, is very underrated when it comes to providing rail service, as again it has 3 different intercity rail lines if you count the Capital Corridor, and it punches well above its weight for a city with about 500,000 people. I really do like how convenient the light rail platform is with regards to the station itself. It's right in between the main building and the actual platforms for these bigger rail systems. I also like the fun tunnel connecting you in between these platforms, although I advise heavily to give yourself like 5 to 10 minutes in between walking from the station's entrance to the actual platforms. TOD wise, the immediate station area is kinda bland with not much but parking, a medical office, and a courthouse. But walk a few minutes to the west and you can end up in Chinatown and also Old Town Sacramento, a very nice and touristy assortment of shops and restaurants with a very frontier vibe right by the very massive Sacramento River. This, along with Downtown Commons, which we'll get to later, is definitely my favorite spot in Sacramento because there's the California State Railroad Museum, which you need to go to if you watch my channel. Past this station, this gets weird, so bear with me. Once it goes to the east, the system is street running with southbound trains on 7th Street and northbound trains on 8th Street, so I'm combining the 7th and 8th Street stations. Around here, it gets way more interesting though. Sure, for your city, county, and state government workers, you have your city hall and a bunch of office buildings to the east. To your west, however, you have the Beam, the Golden One Center, home of the Sacramento Kings of the NBA, a sweet downtown arena with a pedestrian promenade around it, part of the modern Downtown Commons complex. The arena itself is connected to a bunch of stores, restaurants, and even a modern hotel, the Kimpton Sawyer. It really is a perfect example of what I think is TOD. I mean, it's a mixed-use development, blending in entertainment, shopping, dining, and even lodging, all connected to each other via a pedestrian promenade. Definitely the nicest part of Sacramento. All of this is also relatively new, as Golden One Center opened up in 2016, and the Downtown Commons area opened up in phases a few years after. Outside of Doco, which only has these high-end luxury units for sale at the Sawyer, there are some apartments close by like the Bellevue and the Hardin. Crossing the Capitol Mall, you get a nice view of the famously yellow Tower Bridge or the state capitol, home of notable podcast host Father Newsom. I mean, these stations are about 1,000 feet away from the Capitol, so they're arguably some of the most important for any employees in central Sacramento. There aren't just office buildings here though. They're closer to 8th and O. You do have the Capitol Towers high-rise and mid-rise apartments about 750 feet away. Side note, what Sacramento has that a lot of other cities don't is pretty good tree canopy coverage. There are tons of trees everywhere in Sac, and this helps especially when the city averages 92 and 91 degrees in July and August. Archives Plaza is another station centered around office buildings for the state government. There's additionally a great museum on the history of California, which is also nice. Here at the 13th and 16th Street stations, the rail runs on its own right-of-way. This area of Sacramento, which I think is near the historical district, is characterized by its collection of medium-density apartments that are both older and newer. Some of the newer ones being the mixed-use 1340Q and the Luella Loft apartments. The aforementioned historical district is a quaint area with tons of quirky pubs and restaurants, and there's even a warehouse turned public market here with a few eateries and shops. There will even be a new development west of it at 1801 10th Street. 16th Street is also close to the pretty famous Ace of Spades concert venue. East of the platform is a brand new mixed-use development called the Ice Blocks. Yeah, it might be pretty yuppie with a West Elm, Mendocino Farms, and an Anthropology, but it's for sure nice, and I prefer this over a bunch of abandoned warehouses and parking lots. There are residences here too called the Ice House, in line with the ice theme in this development too, and to its south are also the Richmond residences. I also found myself walking past the Maker Midtown apartments as well. But yeah, I can't really hate on an area densifying and redeveloping, with more construction around here too, no matter how overpriced the West Elm wicker baskets might be. For the Folsom Line spur, we'll be exiting downtown Sacramento, continuing on the yellow line between 23rd Street and Sacramento, all the way to Central Historic Folsom. Here at 23rd, I thought I'd be looking at a brand new development that's just housing under construction, but it's actually going to be a theater next to here, which is honestly pretty neat. Outside of this, there isn't a whole lot happening, but about 1,000 feet to the west on 21st Street is the Press at Midtown Quarter development. It's considered mixed use, as the bottom floor has some occupants like a gym and a Chinese restaurant, if only the station was located here instead. 29th is surrounded by a shared right-of-way, and on top of that, it has the misfortune of being underneath a rumbling highway, Highway 50. Around here, you start to enter a car-dominated environment, a lot of car brain going on, as you have a grocery store and tons of offices with parking lots surrounding them here. And yeah, unfortunately, this is our first park and ride lot with the system. I know we haven't seen them yet, but there will be a lot of these, so it is what it is. Ironically enough, this station is where a bunch of offices for the California Department of Transportation are, which is really funny. The saving grace is that there's a ton of development around here though. I mean, there's just too much parking for my liking, unfortunately. You do have the link at Midtown here with a pretty expansive footprint, a bunch of housing, but there are a couple of ground floor tenants as well, so it is mixed use. All I see are a bunch of single family homes and a big ass highway, so let me just rename it for you. There we go. Hey, but you know what? There's no parking lot and it has its own right of way, so I'll give credit where it's due. 48th is boring. There's nowhere to build anything. It's a bunch of housing. Let's move on. 59th Street is currently pretty awful. It's a bunch of empty industrial and commercial spaces, but the future could be pretty bright. See, the former SMUD plant had its land purchased by a couple of developers, and they were going to turn this 20-acre property into a community with a bunch of different housing options, ranging from single family to mid-rise apartments that aims to house about 900 people in total, complete with a child care center, pool, gardens, and even green space. Construction is slated to start in 2025, and it could be very well into the 2030s until this baby opens up. When I came to visit in September 24, the demolition phase was well underway, so I suspect that this is on track to follow this timeline, and I'm really excited for it. 65th has a bunch of new developments surrounding it. You got your medium-sized hotels in the east, the new SMUD campus on its west, and the mixed-use Wexler and Mezzo apartments heavily geared towards students of nearby Sacramento State. I also do like the under-the-bridge connection between the station's area and the university campus, so students outside this area can commute via Sac RT. Yeah, maybe there is a ton of traffic on 65th, but I do like the walkable side streets by the Wexler and their direct connection to the bus plaza and the station. This is also a very popular station, probably the most popular outside of downtown Sacramento that I've seen so far. Power Inn has a cool nickname. It's probably the most badass name, but it's easily the worst station on the system so far. It's just a huge parking lot. And from this point forward, you're going to get some pretty suburban cut and paste parking lot and light rail platform stations past here, so here's a fair warning. College Greens, I think, is named for the shopping center across the street, but this station has way more life around it than Power Inn. It's still a symptom of endless suburban sprawl with tons of parking around it and faraway commercial buildings that are set back. Hey though, at least you have a high school right here in Cristo Rey, and it's a super accessible high school, basically right by the station. There's also a lot of apartment housing a little further to the north on Juilliard Drive, so the area is not bad, it's okay, it's mediocre. For what it's worth, the Social Security building will have 124 apartment units next to it, though it's like 2,000 feet away from the station, so I don't even consider it TOD, but I just figured it's nice to include. So Watt Manlove has a little commercial area close by, adjacent to a bunch of mid-rise office buildings, which is great for commuters. Starfire either has some duplexes or some single-family homes around the station, but I do appreciate how close the station is to them and how it's not set back by a bunch of unnecessary parking. I really like this philosophy the system has so far of not every single station, even in the suburbs, needing a park and ride lot. Tiber, and Butterfield are pretty much the same as before. Tiber has the Enclave apartments and a bunch of townhomes and office buildings. Butterfield has the very fun and entertaining Tax Board of California, the Windsor Ridge apartments, as well as the nimbiest NIMBY that has ever NIMBY'd, at least from a bird's eye view. But when I passed by, it turns out that the 622,000 square foot lot will turn into at least something. Alright, here at Mather Field and Mills, we're in the famously urbanist city of Rancho Cordova. This station just exists, but you see all this land just right for redevelopment? Recognizing this, Rancho Cordova will turn 10 acres into an urban transit village. There will be 120 total units that come from this project, either by townhomes and or multifamily units. But, I mean, it's a good start, and I'm glad this land is being built on and not going to waste. You know, they really named the station Zinfandel because you're going to need some after passing through this god-awful city planning. It's really all the same. I mean, you got your strip malls, your drive-thrus, your gas stations. There's no point in me elaborating any further. Hey, I mean, at Sunrise, you got your 3 hotels for what it's worth. They're pretty set back with parking. You also have the mid-rise Vivo living apartment complex, so, an oasis in a sea of mid, as I always say. Here at Hazel, you have your Oak Brook apartments and an RV park, not to mention an old spaghetti factory, so that makes it automatically better than a lot of the stations I mentioned before, just because of that. Alright, here at Iron Point, welcome to Folsom, California. Here we actually have a cool name for a station and something interesting. The sprawling Folsom Premium Outlets has over 80 stores and is just next to the station's parking lot. But I will say, the pedestrian infrastructure here sucks. There's no path going directly from the transit center to the mall, and I had to walk near a hellish strode just to enter the shopping center with sidewalk access on one side. It's serviceable, but no one realistically is taking transit here, especially not in the hot-ass Sacramento Valley with 30-minute headways and poor pedestrian infrastructure, I'm sorry. Also, at least when I visited, the train actually didn't continue further into Folsom because of track work. So that was really a bummer because I actually wanted to go into downtown Folsom because it looks really nice. Unless you're going to procure some soy sauce at the nearby Kikkoman Foods facility, I don't see why the station exists or why you want to stop here. Alright, here at historic Folsom, we've made it to the end. It's actually a really nice town center, a real town center. There's even a sick railroad table nearby. You have your small town feel here with the main street and small businesses, similar to a lot of Bay Area towns like Palo Alto or Mountain View, if I'm being completely honest. You have your main commercial strip that's surrounded by single-family older houses. I'd have a problem with that if it wasn't so walkable and human-centric though. Hey everyone. Admittedly, it's been a minute since I've made an actual series on a transit system, but I am very excited to show you all that the Sacramento light rail system has to offer. I really hope you like part 1, and I really hope you'll love part 2. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll talk about other spurs in Sacramento, including its future plans. Thank you so much if you've made it this far, and I'll see you next time.